Good morning, members, and thank you for joining FADA's Business Series webinar on electric vehicles. I hope all of you are keeping safe in such testing times. The Government of India has made an ambitious commitment to the creation of demand for electric vehicles through the fast adoption and manufacturing of hybrid as well as electric vehicles, which is FAME, India scheme. Additionally, the promotion of domestic manufacturing through the National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage has supplemented the scheme. As the economics of electric vehicles continue to improve and new business models start gaining acceptance, India's EV market is poised for significant growth in the coming decade. Now, how should auto dealers look at this opportunity? To know more, we have a distinguished set of panelists for today's webinar. But before that, let me request our President, Mr. Venkesh Gulati, to kindly give his opening remarks and followed by introducing all our guest panelists. Venkeshji, over to you. Venkeshji, you're there?
Yeah, sir. Sorry. I will just cut down for some moment. So, hi friends, good morning. Thanks for joining in. We are into this EV panel discussion. So, India is in the cusp of disruption in auto industry with the recent push for electric vehicles. From the government's recent forward-thinking electric vehicle policy to market analysis recommending stocks that might benefit from this gradual transition, EVs have become the new buzzword. And to discuss on this, we have in our panel today the who's who of the EV bandwagon. I'll start from the alphabetic side. So Dr. Amitabh Saran, CEO, Altigreen Propulsion Labs. Dr. Saran has over 28 years of experience with institutions like TCS, Philips, NASA, and then also with startups like Trivium and Buzzin Town. Passionate about clean energy and automobiles, Dr. Saran is the founder of Altigreen Propulsion Labs based in Bangalore, which develops high-efficiency electric mobility solutions in the last mile transport for India and the emerging economies. He has a PhD in computer science from University of California, Santa Barbara, and has published numerous papers and books on software engineering and distributed computing. He is also co-inventor in over 25 global patents. Thank you, Dr. Amitabh, for joining us. Mr. Nagesh A. Nahalli, Group CEO and MD, Greaves Cotton Limited and Director, Ampere Vehicles Private Limited. Mr. Nagesh is a global automotive executive with experience of leading and transforming businesses with profitable growth across key geographies like NA, North America, Asia, and Europe. Under his leadership, Greaves Cotton Limited has signed strategic partnerships and alliances, reinforcing the company position as India's leading last mile transportation solutions and service companies. This includes developing Ampere brand as one of the leading e-mobility brands in India. He was awarded the Booth India year 2009 by Chicago Booth Business School. Mr. Nagesh holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Bangalore University and a Master of Science from University of Texas. He also holds an MBA from University of Chicago Business School. Welcome, Mr. Nagesh. Mr. Ravni, for
The usual glitches in this digital age. Venkeshji, maybe if you can switch off your video and only be on audio. You can come in. Just a minute.
I'm sorry for the internet connection, so I'll continue, Mr. Ravni. So he is also oversees end-to-end business management for developing charging infrastructure across India. He is an alumnus of IMT. Now I'll introduce, welcome Mr. Ravni. So Mr. Pradeep Agarwal, our own co-dealer, state chairperson, FADA Odisha, and dealer principal, JMG Automobile. Mr. Pradeep is an associate dealer of Hero Motorcorp for past 20 years and is the founder of JMG Group. His diverse experience of over 25 years has resulted in his success story in sectors like automobile, diagnostics, education, and business consultancy. He has done his master's in management studies from BITS Pilani. Last but the most important person, Swati Khandelwal, Executive Director, Editor, Z Business. Swati heads overall editorial and corporate developments of India's leading business news channel, Z Business. News editor and anchor with 17 years of experience in TV production, news reporting, live TV news show. Prior to Z, Swati has worked for CNBC TV18 and Bloomberg TV India in leadership roles both in Delhi and Mumbai. Ms. Swati is recipient of Donald T. Shishan International Scholarship at Wharton Seminars for Business Journalists, Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, USA. She has also bagged the Most Promising Business Communicator Award 2017 by Association of Business Communications of India. Thank you, Swati, for coming in and welcome. Over to you, Swati, to please take it further. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you very much. It is my pleasure and honor to be here, to be talking to the who's who of the auto industry and really get the perspective of the new EV age that we are talking about. As Venkesh put it perfectly right, it's the new buzzword. It's what's catching attention, not just in India, but all over the world. And, you know, India becomes a very, very critical, important market as we've kind of put a target as a country to become all electric by 2030. Now, there have been initial hiccups, of course, that we saw when this was announced to now, as we see the government, especially at the center and the state now warming up to the idea of electric vehicles and actually doling out certain policy announcements, schemes, subsidies that were required at that point in time. But we now see them actually getting implemented and announced. And there is an endeavor and push towards electric vehicles. And that's a good news. And that's actually driving the little bit of demand that we're seeing, the little spike that we are seeing in the electric vehicle sales figures, for example. Of course, these are early days. Low base effect is, of course, reflecting, but it seems like we are here to grow pretty exponentially as we've seen it all over the world. All right. So electric vehicles, as we know, enjoy 40% of FAME subsidy, 23% less GST than the traditional ICE vehicles. So clearly there is a intent from the government's end to make people adopt electric vehicles in the long run. We are seeing a lot of benefits being doled out, you know, in terms of subsidies. As I said, you've been given free registrations by certain states, some manufacturing subsidy by certain states. All this is definitely helping. But we'll try and understand the challenges, the real model that will evolve from here for all stakeholders in it, especially dealers, since we are going to be addressing a lot of dealer community. We will try and maybe focus a bit more on what format does it come out to and what is the business model that we are talking about here, the capex, rate of interest, break-even time, because dealers will have to reinvent themselves, get into this space and understand this a little better. So welcome all. Let me begin by first coming to each of you and get a perspective of what you think and how you think this game will unfold for us, especially as a country, as we've set out certain targets. There is, of course, a lot of small policy challenges that we are already facing to more complicated things. So let's begin. Maybe Nagesh, I would want you to come in on this because you've been an expert, seen things from the global front too. Where are we when we talk of electric vehicles realistically as an industry, and what are your thoughts, especially on the challenges front?
Great. Thank you, Swati. Good morning, all, and great to be with you all this morning. Couple of things. Electric technology itself is not old, is not new. It's been around for a while, for several decades, as some of the experts will tell you, right? I still remember 2000 in Detroit, we were working on electric technology at that time, right? So, however, what does it mean? I think we are, in terms of where India is, and when you look at the advent of China, where we have 30 plus million electric two-wheelers running around, right? So India is at the cusp of that inflection, I would say. Why do we say that? Because I think when you look at the unit economics, when you look at especially on the two-wheeler, three-wheeler side, the battery prices going down, the unit economics, the influx of major players. This industry had a couple of key challenges, Swati. One was it was an awareness issue because it was new technology, right? Another one was the range anxiety. Range anxiety, I think our technical teams can fill it. Awareness is one thing that is really, really changing by the quarter, by the month, and thanks to a lot of favorable policies, not only from the center that you touched upon in FAME 2, but also the state government policies, whether it is Gujarat, Maharashtra, Delhi. I think there's been a phenomenal thrust on this. Are we there yet? No. We are a work in progress. Our supply chains are still getting ready. We are indigenizing. We are getting there. But I think the future looks very bright, and the future is electric.
Future indeed is electric. It is looking bright. There are steps that we are seeing being taken by the center and the state in the right direction, slow and steady. But I think it is going to quickly, cover up in that sense. Ravneet, you want to come in on and give your opening thoughts?
Yeah, hi. So, pretty much echo what Nagesh had mentioned. Not surprising because we are the same sort of vehicle class, as it were. So I think we've been in business for about 8 years now, right? And we've seen a variety of challenges that came in the way of scale up. And two or three big ones on the back end, and certainly one on the front end, which is the consumer side, right? So I think the best news at this point in time is that from a consumer perspective, not only is this growing awareness, but also awareness in the right context. And I'll take a minute to explain what I mean by that, right? See, till quite recently, for a lot of people, electric meant, hey, this is what you buy when you want to save money, or this is what you buy when you want to save the world, right? And that's clearly not a strong enough proposition, because if that had to work, then we've been selling in this country about 10, 12 years. We should have been selling in millions now, right? It's only now people realize that, yeah, sure, you save money. Definitely you do. The fact that it's good for the environment, that's also true, but it's just fundamentally better technology. It is a better machine, right? It is a better experience. I think that realization that's coming in, and people see this as an upgrade as opposed to a substitute for what they buy. So which is, and if there's a consumer demand, everything sort of falls into place, right? Whether it's OEM, whether it's supply chain, whether it's dealers and all that. On the back end side, I think there were a couple of issues that we were grappling with, which we sort of, I think we crossed the hump on those ones. Now, one is supply chain.
Yeah.
There really wasn't anything here, right? I mean, when we started, today we talk about, hey, which suppliers do you work with? At that point in time, it was never a question who you work with. Whoever said yes to you, work with them, right? It's as simple as that. So, and it was nascent, it was new. There was no scale there. People weren't willing to invest. So we had an excruciating few years, trying to work around the constraints of supply chain, which today, if you come in, really, any new player comes in, for the most part, that's sort of solved, right? The other one, which is related, is the cost structure, and Nagesh spoke about unit economics. I think now things have turned around. We turned unit profitable a couple of months back, and which means that as we're scaling up now, we're not burning the way we were doing earlier, right? So despite demand being there, we couldn't really scale up because there's only so much money you can throw in the market, right? So I think with cost structures being rationalized, supply chain, getting up, importantly, a line of sight on further costs coming down, not just batteries, right? Everything else, right? So when you have line of sight, you can plan, right? If you have no line of sight, then you're just groping in the dark. So I think a bunch of things have happened, like I said, in the environment, on the consumer side. And today, I think, listen, there's never been a better time in this world to be in EV business now. There's never been a better time. So I think we are on the cusp of a classic hockey stick growth.
True, and you're seeing this when you talk to people generally, and even with the industry, how things have changed. Let's say last couple of years have been pretty phenomenal in the mindset change, I would say, that one is seeing towards electric vehicles, and that's a very encouraging and promising sign. Now, when you say that there is a decent demand that's kind of evolving, and there is a customer who's looking forward to it, because obviously there is the acquisition cost is kind of coming down for now because there is subsidy that the government is giving. But how long is it sustainable? We'll have to work around and see the economies of scale being built with the volume growth and so on. So we are in that evolving stage, as you said rightly. But Amitabh, let me come to you to understand, it's easier said than done. The good news is what we're talking about right now on how this is opened up and everybody is kind of, adopting it slowly but surely. The challenge is on the way. The real bit is, there's so many players out there. There's so much now happening. There is a chaos in a way that's going to get louder, messier, because you will have many more players coming in. Now, for how do you work around that with a constant evolution of technology? I mean, there is yesterday's technology is now older format, and you have to quickly adopt to a new one, and you've already invested in that old technology. So this constant upgradation on technology front, the anxiety, the range anxiety that used to be there, now getting improved over the years. So tell us the real challenges that we still are dealing with.
Yeah, I think you've touched upon a very, very good point. And it's largely because technology has been something that, we've really not worked around. Like Nagesh said, electric vehicles have been around in India for over 2 decades, right? Reva was launched in 2001. There were two-wheelers that have been around for a very, very long time. Unfortunately, they were not intended for or built for this geography. And I totally believe, I honestly believe that the needs for India and the emerging market uh, are very, very unique, very, very differentiated. Anything that would be considered abuse anywhere else in the world is a day-to-day scenario in India. And fossil fuel vehicles, petrol, diesel, LPG, CNG, have done a very, very good thing over the last 100 odd years to be in a position to take care of these things. When we come to electric vehicles, they've kind of been, at least for the first decade, have been kind of a compromise on both price and performance. They've never really been at par with what was available in the market, and hence the adoption has never been so good. Like you rightly said, today's new entrants are focusing on technology. I think it's very, very key to the future of electric vehicles, and to give that, I always say that the transportation industry is a lot of peace of mind based, right? You want your vehicle to always, every time you start it, it should come on. You're going somewhere, you're delivering something, it has to be predictable. And the only way you can do that is when the technology has been built for this geography. I think that's something that's happening. It is clear that there will be a lot of work that needs to be done on a continuous basis to push technology. It's not a acha bana liya now, next thing happens after 5 years. Ain't gonna happen, right? You will have to continuously improve this, and that's something that is a big change from fossil fuel to electric vehicles. But like Ravneet said, electric vehicles are much simpler. I don't want to come up with the cliched thing, 1700 moving parts versus 20 moving parts in electric vehicles, but that's a fact. And hence they're more simple, and hence technology and the areas of focus also are much less, but that'd be a continuum.
Okay, wonderful. Pradeep ji, let me come to you, because you are the interface for a consumer. You understand what the consumer wants. What is it he asks for when he enters the showroom and says, I want an electric vehicle, for example, but my concerns are range. My concerns is safety. My concerns is the cost of the vehicle upfront, at least, because it used to be obviously expensive at one point. The running cost later is cheaper, but you had to pay price for acquiring the vehicle, which was much higher. Of course, this FAME subsidies reduced that. But tell us from the consumer's perspective, the expectations that they have, the challenges that they feel, and how are you addressing it on ground when you are seeing there is now a buzz within consumers who demand electric vehicles? What is it that they look out for?
Happy morning to all the esteemed panelists and my dealer friends across India. I'll be addressing most of the questions of the panelists on behalf of my dealer friends, the concerns what we are facing. Basically, I've been an ICE dealer for the last 20 years. So I'll be a little bit prejudiced towards the ICE manufacturers, and since we have been earning from the ICE two-wheelers. But I can say one thing is that EVs are going to come, nothing is going to stop it. period. But then if you see ICE engines also are going to stay side by side with the EV engines or the EV two-wheelers or the ecosystem. But then what are the customers looking at when they are buying a EV two-wheeler in India? See, the first thing they look at is their technology. So right now, what is the challenge is the customer is looking at whether I'll be able to drive 50,000 kilometers on this bike or not, or this two-wheeler or not. So do we have the quality, the existing manufacturers right now, Ether has come, so all the esteemed panelists have a good products in the market, but then there are many 100 and 200 fly-by-night or small manufacturers who are there in the market today and vanishing tomorrow. So the confidence of the customers of an EV is going down because of inferior product we get in the market. So one is the technology, which we need to improve on. The second is the quality we're looking about. Then the third, the customer looks at style and features. So the kind of style and features, I think the new companies coming up, Ola, Ether, even all the other companies are supporting it. But the style and features need to be worked upon from the Indian customer perspective. And then we have the license requirement. We have 3 categories in the EV category. I'm addressing this question some to the dealer friends also. So once we have less than 25 where the registrations are not required, less than 25 kilometer per hour where the registrations are not required, then we have some range from phase 2 from, let's say, from 25 to 40, and then we have a speed limit from 40 to 80, and accordingly the mileage they covered. So the license requirement, there are many market players in the market who are selling less than 25, and then they're selling and going away. So I will need to address to the panelists that how do we address this, because they are spoiling the name of the EV two-wheelers in the entire ecosystem. And again, the cost saving, the customers understand the cost saving, but the initial cost, which is coming very high, that is a big stumble. And another is the finance. Right now, financiers are not ready to finance the EV sector because of the technology and the resale value which they are getting. And another is the range and the speed. So I think there are 6 or 7 parameters which the customers and the customers are got. So we need to take them whatever they are saying and give them the product what they want. So if the EVs are able to give all these 7 parameters in place, I think we are good to go.
Okay. There are quite a few that you mentioned, and these are, of course, the parameters that the consumer will look at, and even the dealer or all the stakeholders in this game would have to address it to be able to, service your customers better, to be able to do well generally as an industry. Nagesh, let me come and to you to understand, the stakeholders here, being the dealers. For example, you guys are already in the market with your product. You're receiving some good numbers to the initial hiccups to where you are today. I want to understand from you, how are you dealing on these concerns that Pradeep ji was talking about?
Yeah, thanks, Swati. Good question. So clearly things are evolved. So I'll go take a couple of examples, right? So let's start with financing, because our colleague here, Pradeep ji, talked about it, right? 18 months ago, a lot of the big banks would not even talk to me, not talk to my dealers for financing, right? The same big banks are now talking to us, right? When it comes to high speed, and of course, we'll also come back and talk about the slow speed that you addressed, right? So some of us, what we did was, we started an NBFC. We started our own bank to enable. For us, we firmly believe that financing will be a key enabler to this adoption, and financing is needed. Clearly, the progress is being made every quarter. Today, I have major big banks empaneled, but it's not quite yet there, because clearly when you talk about the IC engine financing percentage in terms of sales versus the electric, there's no way. I mean, we have a long way to go. So clearly work in progress, but Swati, we have seen a development in the last 18 months, significant development, I would say, but we are not out of the woods. Another example I would take is, I think Pradeep ji also talked about the low speed. I agree with you. I think, and this is where we have a lot of unorganized players, and a lot of that unorganized is getting, and especially post-COVID, is getting more and more organized and more. So the best way to do it is bring in minimum standards, bring in safety standards, bring in localization standards, push the OEMs to develop that along with the local supply chain, right? And in fact, even give subsidy to across the board. And that will democratize electric vehicles. I totally agree. There shouldn't be fly by night. I mean, going back to what Pradeep ji was talking about, But there is a way to even increase the value chain, making sure that we play across, because India is not a very rich country. Not everybody can afford a 2 lakh product or a 1.5 lakh product. How do we democratize it, and how do we, because what business are we in? Whether you are in the IC engine sales or whether you're an electric vehicle, we are in the business of mobilizing people. We are in the business of last mile mobility. We are in the business of moving people and moving cargo. So when we take a step back, and like my one of the revered Stanford professor, Tony Seba, talks about, we are in the middle of the deepest, most significant technology disruption that the mankind has ever seen. So is this transition happening? I think it's happening. Is it work in progress? I would say the answer is work in progress, but a lot of things month on month is getting better. And collectively, this problem is a huge problem that no one company or no one team can solve it. I think the entire industry has to come together along with our dealer partners and solve it.
Fair enough. Great point. I think all of us will agree to what you just mentioned. But Ravneet, multiple EV OEMs are coming in India. All are appointing dealers to sell their vehicles. Now, these are obviously being imported at this point in time because the numbers are not doing the justice. On the long term, how long will one have to wait for these to be manufactured in India to make a proper business sense? Because this is going to be crucial for the dealership or the dealer's viability, isn't it?
So Swati, I don't think we're waiting at all. Like today, if I can talk about ourselves, other than cells, which India does not manufacture, we have no choice but to import. 99% of whatever is left is already local for us, right? We build our own battery, we source everything locally, motor is local, electronics is local. So everything that we sort of source is all local supply chain, right? So there is already localization, and the government has been very clear in pushing us in this direction, right? So whether it's the linkage to the FAME policy of localization and a bunch of other things, right? So see, the issue is that whenever there is change and whenever there is opportunity, there will be people who jump into it opportunistically, right? And they really mess up the market in the short term, right? Because as Pradeep said, they destroy consumer confidence. People start judging the entire. And see, bear in mind, the category, while there is growing awareness, is still nascent. So many people are forming the opinions for the first time, and they judge the entire category based on what they see, right? And they're really spoiling the market. And when we typically in any new category, when you enter on a zero. You assume you're entering on a zero base with a clean slate, and you build from there. But people who are in the business today, we're actually starting negative. We have to first dispel the myths in the market saying, hey, electric is a compromise and so on and so forth. So it's a disservice they've done. And I can see very clear parallels. So I come from the mobile phone industry. I spent many years in Nokia. And there was a time where there were like 400 brands in the country. And I can tell you the way the EV industry is going right now, we'll see like 200 brands. And there was a time if you woke up late one morning, like one new brand was launched. It was as bad as that. So I think you'll see a lot of influx, but my sense is 90% of those guys will die, because if you don't have a long-term view, if you don't have a platform, you don't have technology, you don't have IP, you don't have a moat, then you just you'll eventually, yeah, sure, you'll make money in the short term, but you'll eventually wither away.
Absolutely agree with you totally on this. Amitabh, when somebody enters into this setup, EV obviously is a relatively new phenomena in terms of adoption. Of course, we talked about how this has been in India from 2000, but it was obviously very, very nascent. We still are small, a long way to go. Now, what are some of the parallels that we can draw from international or global markets? Because, adoption there has been far bigger, bigger in number and overall. So the parallels one could draw from the business model that this brings in, because we already have examples to check and understand the capex, return on income and break even time that the stakeholders will have to go through. What is your sense, and how long does it take, and the myths around the EV bit, especially when we talked about it? What's your sense?
Yeah, so interesting. So, first and foremost, just to complete Ravneet's statement, if you go back into history, back in 1920, and this is a documented fact, there were 1,800 manufacturers of internal combustion engine based vehicles in the US alone. 1,800. There'll be a lot many EV companies that are going to show up. Trust me, the dealers are intelligent, the customer is intelligent. They will wither away and die if they do not meet the needs and the demands of customers. And this is something that has become very clear and apparent across the world, whether it's things where technology started, for example, in the US or in Europe or in Japan or Korea. I mean, hybrid vehicles have been around for a very, very long time, which means electrification. Part internal combustion engine and part electric have been around for a very long time. India skipped that entire hybrid thing and went into electric. I think it's a great move. It's perfectly all right. Whether we are able to sustain that for passenger vehicles and for heavy commercial vehicles, that will be seen. Hopefully, battery prices will be down by that time enough to be in a position to allow full electric vehicles to be in the heavy segment. But especially for last mile transportation, which is what we are covering right now when we talk about two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or small commercial four-wheelers, I think one thing that's very important is the financing aspect. So even though these might be expensive to begin with, you're giving the same down payment. And when you look at it, your operational costs are 70 to 80% less. So if you look at, let's take an example of a delivery van. Altigreen makes three-wheel electric vehicles. And so when I'm selling one, they might be more expensive to begin with, but you're giving the same down payment that you would otherwise give if you were acquiring a diesel vehicle. And then on a monthly basis, you have to pay EMI and you have the operational cost of filling diesel in. And if you're doing that, the price of diesel and the EMI versus the price of electricity charging and the EMI on the electric vehicle, you'll still come out saving 40 to 45%. This is a fact. So there is parity even today. I think the important thing is if we focus on the right kind of quality across the world, you'll see China, for example. They were, I think to last count, there were 175,000, 1.75 lakh companies that were involved in the EV industry in China alone, 1.75 lakh. They're making money. Some of them are, but then there is, the important one, and then there is a long tail. And I think this market is going to evolve. If you look at the way Norway has done, if you look at the way the US is doing, they do come up with practices and policies which ensure that there is adoption, acceleration of adoption. Some might be in the form of taxation, some might be in the form of push and regulation and mandates. I think some states are doing that. In the US, it's fairly common to do something like that. California is a classic example. But I think India, from that perspective, has taken a lot of these kinds of things from across the world. And I think it's a good amalgamation of what's happening over here. As long as we are able to meet quality, I think give that peace of mind in the eyes of the customer. I think to me, that is the most important thing. If we are able to meet that, the rest of the parameters are falling in place at this point.
Okay, sure. So those are some of the things one has to obviously factor in as we go along. Again, the question is really the conversations between the OEMs and its channel partners. Here we are talking about dealers. Now, some of them have adopted this technology or trying to sort of scale up. Some of them are just waiting by and going slow. Now, in that context, Pradeep ji, I would like to know from you, the OEMs that are proactively looking at EV and are already discussing the rollout plan versus some of them who are still figuring things out. How are you dealing with that as a community, as a dealers fraternity? Because many of the companies, especially the new ones that are coming into the market for electric vehicles, are adopting online model for selling. The whole distribution strategy is changing. They perhaps are doing direct online sale through their websites. They don't need dealers as such as partners. So, is that a real concern for you guys? And are you talking to OEMs about it? And what is it that they are saying, for example? You are on mute, sir.
Very interesting question from the dealer side. So to start with, see, we get a lot of inquiries every day in my showroom. I get inquiries about EV, but again, we don't have that product on my table. So ultimately, the maximum inquiries which are getting on for the EV are getting diverted to the ICE, and we have to do it, and I will do it since we don't have that product on the table. And the question about the customers, whether they are happy with the digital part or the non-digital part, right now, if you see, we are having this meeting on Zoom. So I think we have moved forward 7 years with this online stuff, which would have not, we would have taken 7 years to do this. Everything said and done. But in India, what you see, the Indian customer psyche is altogether all different. So we say, jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai, right? So the kind of network partners, all the OEM, the major 4 or 5 players, ICE players in the two-wheeler industry have, I think it will take ages for the new players to come into that particular sector. So what I feel, the ones, no, right now the OEMs are not coming up like Bajaj has come, but they have overpriced the product just to have a showcase product in their portfolio, which is good. TVS is there, but once the other 4 players come up with a mass scale product and push it down through the network, we will have a robust system, I think, and the market should grow at that point of time when you come out with quality products, quality, technology, style, what I'm talking about, speed. But as of now, I think we dealers will be trying to shift, and I will try to address the dealer community also, friends, that we are quite worried about what will happen when the EV markets comes over, whether the EV will be sold through a separate dealer vertical. But I think with the kind of reach the existing manufacturers have taken years and years, almost 30, 40 years to build us up. So the point is they will go through it. And the concern that the EV market is going to take over the ICE market, will all leave parallel to it. The ICE market will have its own niche market. Right now in India, we are selling in this COVID times around 12 lakh two-wheelers per year, sorry, per month. And EVs somewhere around 5,000, 8,000, 10,000. So even if they go exponentially, and we also do it, they'll reach a level of 1 lakh, 2 lakh in the span of next 4 to 5 years, and we'll be touching a volume of 20 lakhs per month. So we have a market for everyone in the ecosystem. The only tech concern which Mr. Amitabh, Mr. Nagesh, and Mr. Navneet has rightly addressed, that we need to work towards the right technology. And once the technology comes into place, everything will flow.
Technology and the cost, I think that is going to be a very important determining factor. Right now, we're getting
point
subsidy.
I'll just like to add. So the main concern here with the customer is that you give a 3 years warranty, 4 years warranty, where the battery level come down by 70%, you replace it. Now the battery cost are almost 40, 50%, 60%, depending upon the manufacturer of the cost of the product. So that is one big concern here. Like in ICE two-wheeler, we almost have we say the customer replace it in 5 to 7 to 10 years. But in case of electric, that's the biggest concern the customers are facing, that after 3 years, I have to replace the battery, and then it cost me a bomb. So how do I go about it? So that is one big concern which the manufacturers have to address. And again, lithium, I've done some homework on this. So lithium is now controlled by China. And with the kind of equation China is having throughout the world, so how are we going to address the lithium issue? And you see, if the lithium issue is not addressed, I think the entire EV sector is in a doldrums. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of points and a lot of questions that I can see already coming in, and I think we would like to address all of them since we have the panel here. Very quickly, Nagesh, you think the new model or the new age generally is now in favor of doing everything direct, reaching out to the customer directly, remove the middleman, so to say. In this context, do you think a dealer is very critical for the growth of your business, or you think you can do without it?
Yeah, great question. First of all, I would say dealer partners are very integral, right? And the business model may evolve, and it will evolve. I mean, we know in the West, Tesla implemented some things long time ago. So, right, so you're going to see, I think there is enough, the market is big enough, like Pradeep ji was talking about. We do see a lot of this coexisting, IC plus electric. We do see online and offline coexisting. However, I think people who are agile, people who start moving in that direction, for example, a couple of the other things Pradeep ji addressed, right? Financing as an enabler, looking at transportation as a service, battery as a service, so that when the customer comes back for 3 years, can battery become a subscription? This gets into the financial engineering. So there'll be business model re-engineering that will happen. That will have to happen both between dealer partners, us, and the finance institutions. So I see this as an evolution, but I definitely see, Swati, to answer your question, it will continue, and probably it will evolve, and together we will find the right happy medium. That's kind of how I see this evolving. So we are firmly in favor of dealer partners.
Okay. All right, that's good, and that's, I think, a great approach to, a win-win kind of a relationship. As you are rightly saying, it's evolving. There are a lot of elements that are coming as we go along, and you're figuring what is the hybrid setup that's going to come. Amitabh, I think you were saying something. You wanted to come in on something, yeah.
Um, yeah. So one thing I did want to mention is I think it's very important to have dealers, because India, the kind of spread India has and the regional effects, I think it really helps to have dealers in place, because they have a very good idea of what's happening locally. That's number one. I think number two, I do sense some kind of fear sometimes when I talk to dealers or prospective dealers in terms of how will we make money. Services khatam ho jayenge, spares kam hai, because I mean 1700 to 20, that thing is, I think there are new models, like Lankesh said, there are new models that are emerging, electrification, charging, battery, battery costs or battery swapping. These are new models that will emerge as far as dealers are concerned. Plus, also realize that vehicles have a fairly large percentage of mechanical parts, and the mechanical parts still remain. So those will need to get serviced, and they do get serviced. The only thing is that the engine gets replaced by something more electronic and electrical. I'm not saying that electric vehicles are basically diesel vehicles with electric motors in it. No, I'm not saying that. But there's a lot of things that change in it. But for the most part, there's a lot of things that evolve and will emerge as far as services are concerned and spares are concerned. Now the quantum of spares becomes larger. So instead of a part that might have cost 150 rupees, now you might have something that costs 4,000 rupees, because that's the smallest component of an EV that you will be in a position to replace. So I think a lot is changing, and dealers will continue to be extremely important partners in the entire ecosystem, and they will get to make a lot of money. I think I don't see that changing. How
Okay.
soon the incumbents show up will be a different thing. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's pretty encouraging to hear that you believe that there is a lot that the dealers have in here. I mean, they need not worry really, but yeah, the model, the setup will change. There will be different ways or avenues that will come up for them to make money in that sense. Okay, fine. Let me go to Ravneet, because you have uh, your offhand experience on how it's working out. What are the dealer partners telling you? How are you setting up your do you think uh, dealers, traditional dealers with ICE versus the new dealers only for EV, what's been your preference? You think uh, which ones are better in your mind, and do you prefer the traditional ones, or you think there should be new set of dealers completely for EV only? I mean, what's your experience been?
Yeah, so I think firstly I endorse what's being said here. I think the dealer channel has a very important role to play. In addition to what's already been said, the other thing to also bear in mind is that we are still talking about a new category, new technology, which needs, so we're in a phase where consumer needs a lot of hand holding, education, they want to touch and feel, try out. So we sell online as well. But that online is not that because we believe that will replace the online. Online is simply, in a certain part of consumer journey, if it's just easier for guys to do stuff online, pay online, upload documents, etc., we just easing that, just take friction out of the equation. But it's not a substitute for the interaction that happens at retail, and that's super duper important, right? So that's very clearly the path we're going in terms of the kind of partners we're working with. So it's, to us honestly, it's not about separate channels, same channel, new, old, etc. One of the things, so we work with with partners across all cities, and in addition to looking at typical things you would look at, hey, experience and financial might, all the boxes that everybody else would take. But because I mentioned that this stage of business needs a different kind of selling. There's a lot of concept selling, there's a lot of experiential selling that needs to happen. And there are certain partners who are just fundamentally geared towards that, they are temperamentally geared towards that. And there are certain partners who are just looking at just throughput, right? Just so the Honda Activa aya bika, aya bika, aya bika, right? So that's fine, right? So without adding a layer of judgment, that's a different business model. But I think what the EV industry needs are partners who understand what it takes at this stage of the business to grow the category, right? Because right now we're growing the category. We're not in a brand war at this point in time, right? We're talking about
The industry.
weaning people away from petrol, right? And therefore, it needs a different kind of temperament and mindset, right? And I think the right partners for any EV business are partners who understand what it takes at this stage to, to grow the business.
Okay, all right. Understanding the way you are looking at things as electric vehicle manufacturer, on how dealer fraternity is evolving, and what is it that you expect from them and they expect from you. Coming to Nagesh, you know, electric vehicles, we know is the future. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there is going to be a substantial amount of such vehicles that will come across all verticals, be it two-wheelers, four-wheelers, three-wheelers, and trucks, buses, public transport, and so on, last mile connectivity. Now, tell us, because this is a new game, this is a new setup. Now, profitability or a business model is what needs to be brought about. And it will keep evolving, you rightly said. But at this stage where we are, to projections that we have in our minds, and some study that I'm sure you would have done, what is the kind of minimum capex, return on investment, and break-even time that a dealer or any investor who wants to get into this business should look at, who wants to enter in the electric vehicle game?
Great. I think it also, so let me take a step back. So what we have is we have two categories. One is a pure traditional Ampere, where it is the typical 3S, right? Sales and service and parts, right? Another one, we also do multi-brand, which, by the way, I believe multi-brand sales are going to pick up in India. We are a firm believer in that. So where we sell different brands through our Greaves retail network. So when you look at the economics of the two, it's very different, because our Greaves retail networks does multi-brand service as well as does multi-brand sales, right, for different brands. And then we have categories of A, B, C, D cities, right, depending upon the volume and the penetration. So when you look at it, and then the size of the showroom, whether you're 1,000 to 2,500 or 3,000, right, versus how much spares you're holding, etc., right? So where I'm getting at is, depending on the category A or B or C city, right, depending upon the size of the showroom, the economics can range anywhere between less than a year to about 2 years in some cases, right? Of course, everything is different. We work this out individually with our dealer partners, and this is an investment that we together make, right? And it varies from case to case, varies from city to city. So that's the broad brush what I will put out there.
Very quickly, before I get on to the questions, because I can see a lot of them and we would want to address them since you all are here. This model, and I'm curious because this is probably going to be the future model that perhaps OEMs will adopt, which we saw with, for example, Mercedes-Benz recently. All dealer partners will be aware, and so would you be basically a franchise partner, or you don't have to take the inventory and bear the cost. The company keeps that, but if you sell a product, you basically get a commission on it. Is that where we are headed? Is that something that is going to substantially reduce the pressure on dealers also and improve their viability, because they ultimately are your partners who help you sell more vehicles? And perhaps this will work. There are some nations where this thing did not take off, by the way. Do you think in India this is going to work out in the long run? Maybe Ramneet, you want to come in on that?
I think it's an interesting model, and we'll have to see how it bears out and whether the applicability of this model is consistent across different kinds of vehicles. Does it work for Mercedes at their scale? Will it work for Ampere at their scale? Will it work for Ather at our scale, and so on and so forth, right? But the idea of keeping it light for partners, I think that's the core of where this is coming from, right? And so today, we've been very clear with our partners that we have 15 days or less of inventory, right? The last thing you want is inventory piling up and pressures piling up and all that. Really, that helps nobody in the system, right? Whether it's 0 days and in direct from OEM to customer, whether it's 15 days, whether it's 5 days, I think it'll unfold. But to keep it asset light and keep it working capital light for partner, I think that larger point is valid. The solutions may vary from category to category.
Okay, solutions will vary from category. Okay, let's jump in on to the questions that are coming in, and I think they're pretty interesting. All I would request from people who are writing in, I like it if you have a specific person to respond, because you may have a direct question to somebody and I may end up asking someone else. So it'll be nice if you have a specific person in mind for your question that you're posing. Let me bring in Rahul Jain. Sent a question for Ather. What are the new age companies like Ather planning to have dealers in tier 2 and tier 3 cities? Ramneet, you want to?
Oh, we are well on our way. So by the end of this financial year, we'll be in about 45 to 50 cities, so already touching tier. In the 12 months following this financial year, we hope to be in 100 cities. So yeah, we are on our way. It's only a question of how fast we can scale up, but we're not stopping just because you want to stop at tier 1. It's really a question of our ability to operationally sort of get in the market. So we are there.
Okay, you're there. So there is lots coming, Rahul. You can look out for. Pranav Shah, he's saying that unlike IC, there'll be big number of players, OEMs, as well as dealers or supply chain partners. So each one of them will have small portion of market share. How will the dealership structure pan out in future? Will it be like small shop, unorganized segment compared to SME, MSME type of structure at present? Amitabh?
I think it'll evolve. It's very difficult to say what's going to happen, but I can assure you it's going to be a very good mix. I don't think it's going to be just a very tiny MSME versus the very large. I think it'll be a combination of all of that. You will see new categories being created in vehicles also. Realize this. This is not an ICE, which takes, 20, 30 years of development as an engine. I mean, there'll be a lot more vehicles and types of vehicles that will show up for needs that are very specific to an end customer requirement. And you might have small outlets for that. You might have very big showrooms for that. So I think it will be an evolving thing. Let's maintain that this is a category that is being created. Not going to happen anytime soon. Yeah.
Okay, all right. A category being created. It will be a mix in a way, as you said. All right. Arun Paez asked a question. How long do you think EV and IC vehicles will coexist? I think it's going to be there for a pretty decent long time, 10 years at least. I don't know, but I'll probably, Nagesh, you would want to respond. Or how long will it take for the two-wheeler market to be fully electric in India? We're saying 2030. Do you think it's realistic?
Yeah, so I think that's the $1 billion question, right? So we believe it's going to coexist. We believe partly because, let's face it, India is a very complex country. Fuel availability, challenges in infra is always the key, right? So I think it will coexist for a while, at least in the near, like you said, right? And I'm not going to put a percentage out there because all the experts, all the consultants have anywhere between 50 to 80% and 100%. So, but the good part is, I think just look at it like Amitabh said, this is a new commodity. This is a gadget on wheels. Look at it as a consumer good that is going to evolve and life cycles are going to shrink, and go with the flow. Do both, go with the flow.
I think that's very, very, I think the highlight really you have pointed out as we are evolving, going with the flow is the only way. I mean, preset notions about anything in today's day and age with technology disrupting everything that we're doing. I think the best is to keep seeing and adopting and, and be flexible and agile to keep changing along the way. I agree with you. And I hope people hearing would agree on that as well. Pavitra Khanna has asked, is battery charging a profitable business? Can that be a profitable business? You would want to continue, Nagesh? What's your thought? Sorry, battery charging, can it be a profitable business? Nagesh?
Oh, battery charging. Sorry, I didn't realize you were asking me. So I think right now, we have done a couple of proof of concept. Right now, at least we have seen it's still work in progress. Yes, it's moving towards that. We're working with some partners, right, both for swapping and charging options. But I think Amitabh may have a view on that, given his background.
Amitabh, do you?
Definitely profitable. Not even a question mark there. I think, and it might be for starters, there are a lot of programs being offered by the government to set up these charging stations. There is real estate requirements, there are electricity connections and all that. Some states have already announced better rates. But I think technology is evolving so fast that I think it'll be a good thing. As far as I'm not trying to position swapping versus charging at this point, I will reserve my comments on that. But as far as batteries and working with batteries are concerned, I think it will become a profitable model going forward.
Okay, all right. So that will become a profitable model. Heartening to know. Also, in connection with what you've mentioned, Amitabh, I would want you to take Arjun Pawar's question also. They want to know how can dealerships contribute in building charging infra by partnering with OEMs. You think there's a good business model there?
Two thumbs up. Absolutely.
Yes.
I think this will be a very, very key and very important area that dealers will contribute in. I think you will, because of the presence, they have the real estate. After all, dealerships were around the concept of owning real estate, right? And they do have it. So why not be in a position to provide that capability? I think, like I said, these business models will evolve, but it's clear that they will be very, very important partners in ensuring the faster adoption of electric vehicles. Charging, swapping, all these are things that will evolve. They'll be very important partners. Pradeep ji was trying to say something. Sorry, he was raising his hand. So
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Also, again, coming back to the battery issue, I think which is the crux of the whole EV sector. So in a place like in a two-wheeler market in India, where a 70% or 80% of the customers profile, we sell it to the rural customers. So I like to ask all of you in the panel, like, how are we going to address, I mean, as an ecosystem, as an industry, we are also part of the system. How do we address the charging points, which some of our co-dealer friends have also answered? If that is not answered, customers will not go ahead and buy. We understand that we have a charging scale of they can drive 80 kilometers, 90, 40, 100, depending upon the kind of price we are paying for it. So, but in the long term, the next 2 years, 3 years, how are we as industry players in the market going to address the charging touch points at the last point in a village, in a taluka, in a panchayat? If till that time that is not addressed, it will become very tough for us to sell EV in the ecosystem.
Who would, Ravneet?
I can go, yeah. See, this charging is a little complex question. I'll spend some time on this, right? Because the answer varies based on what kind of vehicle we're talking about. Let's take the case of scooters. Now, scooters, as you're aware, is a more utilitarian purchase. It's used for intra-city commute. It's not like Sunday morning rides and intercity and all that. Even in a large city like a Bangalore or a Chennai, an average scooter does about anything between 22 to 25 kilometers a day. That's the average commute that people do, right? Any good scooter should give you a range of 80, 90 upwards. If any decent scooter would do that. And typically the charging behavior, and this is globally and not limited to India. India uh, displays the same trends as global, is overnight charging. So people come back home, just the way you put your mobile phone for charging at night, you wake up in the morning, with the phone charge. People do exactly the same with their vehicle. So every morning you start with 90, 95 kilometers in your back pocket. So the role of public infra for scooters becomes slightly limited. No, it does not take away the case for no infra. Of course, you need infra because there will be outliers who ride more. There will be people who you may be riding more on any particular day than you anticipated, and therefore you do need to have public infra as well. So like in our case, like we have already about 40 or 50 points in Bangalore itself and going in other cities as well. So we will have that, but the criticality of charging infra for something like a scooter becomes slightly lower, and especially if you go to smaller towns where the average commute is not like end to end in one town is like 10 kilometers, right? So really, it's a bit of a red herring when it comes to scooters. The game changes when you look at things like motorbikes. When you look at cars, you look at public transport, right? There the use cases are different. If you look at public transport where downtime is equal to money, you absolutely need charging infra. And that's why in case like new models like battery swapping etc come into play, because you need to be you need to be working through the day. You can't have downtime, right? If you look at cars, for example, now the case for charging infra for cars becomes slightly different from the case for scooters. Like you need highway coverage. You need to have if you're going from one city to the other, you want to make sure that you're not going to be stranded on the way. So and they're different, and the cost of charges is different, real estate is different, requirement is different, power requirement is different, and so on and so forth. So like I said, it's a combination of a few things, but in terms of the criticality, I would stick my neck out and say that today we don't believe that a lack of public charging infra should come in does come in the way of adoption of scooters. It will impact cars, it will impact public transport, but scooters, which really is where the bulk of sales are coming from, are really not at the mercy of charging infra the way a lot of people like to believe it is, right? It's not as critical.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Good answer. Long explanation on where and what you're seeing on this front. Ashish Pandey's asked a question where he wants to know, and I think Amitabh probably would be able to respond to this. Aluminium being used instead of lithium. Again, the technology they're saying now, the entire ecosystem will have to be seen because dependency on China will reduce in batteries. Is that true? He's asking.
Once again, battery technologies take about 10 years to commercialize. I'm talking about short time frames, right? Otherwise, they take much longer than that. There are already commercial applications of aluminum, aluminum water, aluminum air that have started in some countries. I think it'll have to be seen of how those models will evolve and be relevant for India in the emerging markets. This is a very, very different ball game here, right? So there will be newer technologies that will come. Trust me when I tell you this. As a pack, it wouldn't matter to let's say a dealer partner, or let's say to the actual vehicle, whether you have nuclear fission and fusion inside it. It'll all be encapsulated, all through software driven. At the end of the day, you will get energy in your vehicle, whether that source of energy is a hydrogen fuel cell, whether it is aluminum. I think a lot will change, but it's clear why aluminum is interesting is because India has a lot of it. And that will definitely reduce the dependence of lithium. Plus, recycling lithium and all these, they're big challenges. They are big challenges. It's just something that has good energy density, and hence we use it. Aluminum does not. So there are lots of up and downs in the entire equation. There will be a lot of changes that happen over the course of the next 10 years, but it'll all be encapsulated. It will be a black box. It'll continue to be that. It'll have to be charged, whether portable, whether directly on the vehicle, whether swappable, doesn't matter. It's a black box. Just charge it and on the go.
Okay, it will be charged. Now how and what shape or form it will take, we'll have to see. But yeah, that's the process that we'll see as we go along. Anshul has asked a very interesting question, and I agree that Tesla really changed the game and did a lot of interesting thing when it comes to offering the right price with performance. You've given a great speed, look, performance, range, all of that, and that led to a huge demand for electric vehicles for India. When do we see that coming, and which are the probable players perhaps one should watch out for? Now, I'm wondering who should I ask this question? Nagesh, maybe you would want to respond.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Clearly, business model evolutions, business model changes will drive the industry, like we have talked about, I think, over the last 45 minutes, right? So clearly, people who are willing to adopt, not just understanding the consumer, but also the business model re-engineering, like we've talked about here, right? I think will win. Who will win? I think my feeling is stay close to the consumer, understand the consumer pain points, and that's where the dealer partner becomes very, very critical, right? And be agile and adapt to the time. So for example, what we may have done previously may not work in the future. How do we re-engineer it? How do we I think that would probably be what I would recommend. And I'm not going to hazard a guess, but all said and done, I think China is a classic example of lot of newcomers ended up winning that race. So there is, I think the market size is big. I again reiterate, I think there is room for everybody. And I think as long as we focus on the customer, we focus on being agile and delivering what the customer wants, I think there'll be a lot of winners in the space. The market will be big enough.
Okay, the market will be big
Hey,
enough.
Swati, can I come in on this one if you don't mind? Yeah, I think the point of Tesla, I think, is a critical one, not for Teslas, because it's reflective of a larger truth of this market, right? If you really have to grow the market, and if you really have to move people in millions from ICE to electric, you really have to build compelling products. People have to desire and want those products, right? Tesla never said, "Hey, buy me because I save you money, or is good for the world, good for the environment, and no emissions and etc." They said, this is just a beautiful machine. It rides amazingly well. It has it's packed with technology, over-the-air updates, performance, pickup, and bunch of other things, right? And people are buying it for that, right? I think for the longest time, we've been trying this, certainly in India, at least the initial players talk about, hey, buy it because leave a better world for your child, or a better world for, make a better world or save money and all that. If that argument had to work, it would have worked by now, right? It's been 10 years since we've been trying, right? The only way, and the reason you see today, that that you see a buzz in the market, and you see traction, and you see excitement, is because today there is a bunch of products which are credible products. These are products which can look at a very good petrol product in the eye and compete neck and neck, right? And that wasn't the case till quite recently. And the moment you have great products, and the moment you have products that are genuine substitutes for, or even better than what people are buying today in the petrol world, you'll see this market move much faster than anybody has ever anticipated, right? And I can, I stick my neck out and say that today the demand is far greater than what we can feed and supply, right? There are no products here. If I give you 20 lakhs, Swati, what would you buy? You have two options there. Like, so to say that people, there are no products in the market and therefore the market is small is wrong, because people don't have choice, right? Get products. People are waiting with money, man. This is the time to, be in this business.
Totally agree. In fact, a lot of people call us, right? I mean, to get a sense of what they should buy, their views. I mean, we do give our views on what they should probably look at. But EV, the kind of questions that are coming, and people are ready to wait. They are saying, okay, we are ready to wait, and our next product will be electric vehicle. So that mindset has changed. They're waiting for the right product, and an endorsed one. Probably the aspirational part of it has to be addressed. And you rightly said, it's really not about how much it will save you. I mean, Tata Nano is a classic example. It failed because it just was meant for more people, is how it was positioned. But mass may not always work. You have to make it desirable, aspirational. Also, obviously, the benefits of it, which you will address and say, the running cost is not as expensive, etc. But the first point is how good it is on its merit of performance, on looks, etc. And that really works. I agree with you totally. Many questions. I think I'll just probably take the essence, because some people are asking questions, the same question. So they want to know on how quickly will we, one second. Okay, sorry. Yeah, because the prices are still being, sort of subsidized by the government. So what happens when the subsidy goes? Does it increase the cost a lot and then makes it again unviable? How do you look at the support that the government is currently giving? Who would, Ravneet?
Yeah, I think see, the support right now is obviously very welcome, because it addresses the sticker shock today that a lot of customers might feel. While there is a total cost of ownership story, but there is also an acquisition cost that that can become a deterrent for consumers, which gets solved in the short term. But listen, anybody who has any long-term view in this business has not factored subsidy in their business plans beyond 2-3 years or so, right? Nobody else has. And if somebody has, then they're sitting on a time bomb, right? So the increased subsidy, whether it's the increased fame that came in recently, or the state subsidies that are coming in as a top up, this is as of the last 4 and 6 weeks, right? We've been scaling up, and other people have been scaling up for a long time. We didn't assume this is going to come in, right? This is just like a welcome move by the government, a bit of a surprise, right? So today the subsidy is required, because while the cost structures are getting better and getting rationalized, it's work in progress, right? We believe in 2 to 3 years time, we'll be in a place where even if the subsidy is yanked off, which it will be eventually, is that we will be in a position to sustain the prices that we have and not lose money, right? So yeah, sure, you may get it wrong by a few quarters and all that, but it's really not a case ki 5 saal 10 saal pata nahi ho kya raha hai. I mean, that world is not there, right? So we don't factor subsidy into our long term plans at all. Yeah.
Okay. Not factoring subsidy. I think that's a fair play. For now, it's required, and the government is doing its bit as we go along. I believe that economies of scale and volume pickup will help address that issue of adoption of this product. Sure. Jigar has asked a question. What do you think will be the role and segment share of big existing two-wheeler brands? As in, where do you see the top 5 brands' performance in the electric two-wheeler era? There is a sense that market will have far too many players. Nagesh.
I think both me and Amitabh have answered that question in the past, wherein we said, I think the market is big enough. There'll be room for a lot of people, right? People are agile. This is going to be a consumer good. It's a people who understand the consumer in terms of affordability, uninterrupted journey, reliability, quality, right? That's what the Indian consumer wants. I think there'll be winners. China is a classic example. See who are in the top three of the two-wheeler winners in China, right? So I would not hazard a guess right here, but I think the room is big enough. There is opportunity for everybody. This is a different world we live in, post-COVID. And opportunity is huge for everybody.
I think absolutely. Aapda mein avsar, na, as the Prime Minister has said, and I think we've used this very smartly, intelligently. We should do this also for adoption of electric vehicle technology at the right time, actually. Disrupting, but giving everybody a new way to look at things and pick up the pieces and understand where they can make money. And I think there is far many places which perhaps we are not yet aware, and it will come along as we go along, as you rightly said. Okay, a lot of people are asking, and I think Amitabh, you would want to respond on this whole battery swapping, and you did talk about it, and you didn't want to get into the specifics of it, but just to give a sense of what is from, of course, what's happening globally as well, and what India is trying to adopt. This whole swapping business and replacing battery. What do we do with the old batteries, and this whole issue of environment problem as well, because ultimately we are charging this from our traditional power points, which is not renewable. So this whole game is still a little bit complicated, isn't it?
So there's this environment is changing a lot. Back when we started in 2011, 2012, 91% of India's electricity was coming from coal grids. Today, that number is down to some of the low 70s. So a lot is changing also. Renewable sources of electricity are rapidly picking up. So we will not need to feel guilty about using these. Also realize a very important statistic: 3 lakh people lose their lives every year in this country because of air quality related to road transport vehicles. Most of these people are not dying in the dead sleep, are not dying in the in the remote places where electricity is being generated. So if I look at the environment itself, it is a big problem in overcrowded cities, and that's an area which can get fixed if we were driving electric vehicles. So that's number one. As far as swapping versus charging versus portability of batteries, I call that different a little bit. I think, again, an evolving model. I think in some use cases, you don't need swapping. For example, Ravneet mentioned about an end user case of a scooter, which is typically driven 20 to 25 kilometers a day. You have an 80-kilometer scooter, you don't need to swap it. You can just charge it at home. Similarly, if you're driving a delivery van, you know that most delivery vans drive for about 100, 120 kilometers. As long as you can provide them with a vehicle that drives 150 kilometers, you're kosher, don't need to swap. But when it comes to, for example, passenger three-wheelers, you may be going from place X to place Y, which might be very, very remote. In that case, you may need to have, either intermediate charging. Intermediate charging might take 3 to 4 hours. It's not a solution. So in that case, perhaps swapping, fast charging, portability of batteries where you can take out a battery and do something else with it. I think, again, these are evolving things that will be very segment focused. So you will find some of these things very important in a specific segment. For example, people do live in chawls. How do you expect them to charge a vehicle? They can't have a wire running down from there. How many people live in apartment complexes where they will have a socket to charge the vehicles overnight? We understand this, and hence the focus of this industry right now. This is a segment that's evolving. Our focus will be on those guys who are capable of taking care of these kinds of things. I think it'll evolve over time. Swapping is an other alternative. It's not going to be the only thing that remains around. I think battery charging, faster charging, new age batteries that come about. I think, yeah.
Sure. So this will coexist, and I mean, as you're rightly saying, everything is evolving. So we are going to see how things pan out, which one is preferred more, which is easier to kind of adopt, etc. Nikhil, there's a question from you, but this is something that they've answered, and I did pose this to all the guests here, whether intermediaries are being eliminated. We are seeing this across the sectors. and he wants an honest opinion about the probability of eliminating the dealer network for electric vehicles in the long term. I believe everyone said no, they do need the dealer partner. They're going to be critical. Is there anything you want to add, anybody, to this?
I think I might be the right person to answer this, but I can assure my dealer fraternity friends from the two-wheeler and from the auto industry, like for the last 15 days, once I was nominated for this webinar, I've done a lot of homework into this particular industry and how it's performing all over the world. Like, I'll just give you in 2 minutes. So like in the world, Norway is the #1 country where they have the maximum EV in the market. Then you have the Iceland, but then they are heavily subsidized. Even right now, if you go to the US, which is one we consider mature market for any particular industry, there the EV sales are coming down because the government has withdrawn the subsidies which they are offering. And in a country like India, which is, let's say, there are 30 countries inside India. So you have a diverse market, we have a vast population across all demographics. So I can assure you, with the kind of research I have done, dealer friends, that ICE and EVs are going to coexist, and the ICE market will be much bigger than the EV. But as an environmental friendly citizen, we should hope that in the long term EVs take over us. But that will be a very tough challenge. I mean, from my heart, I'm saying that. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think this is great because coming from one of the big dealers who's got a sense and has done the research on how they coexist, so they really need not worry. And I think the point that one of the panelists made, that you'll have to find the ways to be relevant and be able to sort of grow this market. And I think there's enough and more as we go along. We'll keep evolving as we're talking on. Anuj has asked one question on multi-brand retail outlet future. Is there a future of that in automobiles? I mean, so basically, again, whether two-wheeler, one brand electric, or multi-electric two-wheeler brand will work to start with, and how will it pan out? Nagesh?
Yeah, we are doing that. We've started that on the Grips retail side, and we are seeing success. And so clearly, we believe that has a lot of opportunity, and that also obviously reduces the threshold from a viability standpoint. It obviously also, and in fact, we're doing both multi-brand sales and multi-brand service. So clearly, yes, we believe that is one of the evolving themes as we go forward. And it's relevant, it's prevalent in a lot of other countries outside India.
Question somebody's asked: electric charges, electricity charges. Right now, of course, we are used to petrol and diesel, but eventually once we get into 2 or 3, 4-wheelers on electric, do you think electricity charges will go? Because obviously the demand will go up. And how will that affect? Has somebody got any idea? Nagesh, Bhavni?
Yeah, I mean, see, we should look at electrification independent of what's happening in the EV industry, right? If you look at electrification per se, we are very rapidly going towards two things: renewables and distributed systems, right? As opposed to very one large coal-powered or hydro pumping it from one part of the country to the other, right? So that's happening anyways, right? And today the cost is coming down dramatically because solar is really hitting scale now, right? And so I don't think the power that we draw as an industry is going to be so fast, so dramatic, so soon that it'll make the entire economics of electricity topsy-turvy. It'll take time, because I'll give you a sense, right? It's like running, if you charge a scooter at home for 4 hours, it's like you're running like a reasonable AC for like 2.5 to 3 hours, right? It's as simple as that, right? It's not like it's guzzling so much electricity that suddenly the entire grid is sort of is topsy-turvy. That's not going to happen.
Okay. Couple questions I'm going to combine. Some people are asking, because we've seen obviously electric vehicle brands focusing more on electric scooters, and you did talk about that, Ravneet, in the beginning. We're not seeing bikes as much. When do we see that happen? Also, somehow large OEMs are still not very aggressive in launching electric vehicles and developing charging infrastructure. It's the new age tech companies that are coming up and doing that. Now, why that resistance, and when do we see that being addressed? Nagesh or Amitabh, one of you.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, Nagesh, please.
Yeah. So in terms of the question itself, I think in terms of the which one do you want to answer first? Let me. I think there were two
So
parts.
why not bikes and scooters for now? And generally, why not aggressively launching the established big OEMs? Why are
Fair
they
enough.
not?
So the second part I'll save for Amitabh maybe to answer. But in terms of bikes, our assessment is obviously we are seeing a scooterization trend. I mean, if you look at the data for the last 10 years in India, right, there has been a scooterization trend increase, right? Point number one. Point number two, I think whether you look at both the B2C and the B2B applications, right? Especially B2B, when you look at ride sharing applications or the delivery services, the Swiggy, the Zomatos of the world, right? Lot of those, I think the scooterization, we definitely believe will happen. Motorbike segment, we believe will come. But when you look at it today, it's lagging. It will lag the scooter segment, and it will come over a period of time. I would say 4 to 8 years. But the scooterization is here to stay, and scooterization trend will continue significantly.
Okay, okay. Amitabh, you want to come in on why there is reluctance from big OEMs in launches and setting up charging infrastructures to the new guys?
Yeah, it's it's something that you see across the globe. It's not just India, and it's not just electrification, electric vehicles. Ramneet's been with Nokia. At one point, it had 83% market share. I think incumbents versus new companies, startups, who disrupts, who does. I create that differentiation between sustaining innovation versus disruptive innovation. I think startups are the ones that do disruptive innovations. It took a Tesla to make that change happen, even in the US. Chevy Bolt, Nissan Leaf, very, very good electric vehicles, even before Tesla showed up. Never made it because there is a bias. There is a natural capital bias that you have towards an existing investment that you made. Incumbents will be slow in coming to the space, and hence it gives us the space as new age companies to be able to come, make that difference, establish the market. And in some cases, China is a classic example, Tesla is a classic example. There will be people and force behind you, and you can become a leader in that space. I think it's something that is seen across the globe. It'll happen here. Kodak, a classic example. There are lots of examples. History is replete with examples of why incumbents were not able to make it. I'm not saying that it will happen in the automobile industry. No, I'm not saying that. It's just that they're just slower to catch up. And once they do, then of course, the market picks up much more rapidly. I'll rest my case there as far as I'm concerned.
Navneet, two tech questions and then we'll wrap it up because I think we are just about closing on the time. Sodium ion batteries, few startups are using. What stage are we with these right now? And parallelly, of course, hydrogen technology globally we are seeing is being seen as a threat to EV technology, which is, both are, of course, early days. But how do you sort of look at that? And how true is that? How big a threat is hydrogen technology to EVs?
Swati, I'm not a technical guy. I'll ask Dr. Amitabh Saran to answer. I'm certainly not qualified to answer that.
Okay.
So, whatever be that technology, sodium, like I said, these are black boxes. As far as we are concerned, guys, don't really focus on that. This is a black box. There could be nuclear reactor inside it. Don't worry about it. Even if it's hydrogen, ultimately, you will need some kind of generation mechanism that comes through hydrogen. Perfectly all right. Everything else in the vehicle remains electric. So electrification is here to say, because it is the right thing, it is the most efficient and the most simple thing that you want in a vehicle. What would be that source of energy? How can you generate it? How can you create a sustaining version of that? Assume it to be a black box at this point. Things are very, very rapidly changing, except that because it is a vehicle on which your livelihood depends or your life depends, things will be slow to happen. I said typical electric vehicle, battery technologies take about 10 years for commercialization. That's on a fast track. It'll be much longer than that. So there will be new things that will keep emerging, slowly but steadily. I think as of now, just keep that as a black box. Just assume that that's a source of energy. Perfectly all right. You will find newer things actually showing up, not just sodium, aluminum. Like I said, fuel cells, hydrogen, all very good examples.
By the way, as we speak, let me give you one not breaking news, but yeah, news that Ola scooter, which opened its booking, have received in a day 1 lakh bookings. So yeah, it's interesting times. We're talking about electric vehicle, and this is where the response is coming. Clearly, people are excited and want to adopt. So there's a lot that's going to happen in this space, surely. All right. So on that note, I'll hand it over back to Vignesh, because there are a few questions probably we may not have addressed, but I think we'll have to respect time from all. But I believe everybody will be happy to take them offline, or through emails that you can send or reach out. Thank you very much, guys. It was lovely speaking and interacting and learning from each of you.
It's been a really enriching session for all of us, and I hope it has enriched the knowledge of all our members also. Now, to bring this session to its end, I will request FADA Secretary Mr. C.S. Vigneshwar to kindly deliver his vote of thanks.
Thanks so much, Sash, and thanks to all the participants, the panelists here. It was really nice having you here because to a large extent, if not a small extent, we've started understanding the beast of the EV industry, the EV vehicle, how things work, how's the ecosystem which works along with it. Because I don't think these things can work in by a singularity. So the multiple things which actually come into it. Also, thanks so much because it's pretty much a new frontier for most of the ICE dealers. It's no more ICE baby as we used to have it for the last 100 years, and things are a lot more different there, and we really need to understand how things work. The thing is, we also got to understand that how technology is fast changing, and how many different variables are there or different options are there in the EV itself. Because I remember reading somewhere that the first EV vehicle was invented nearly 130, 140 years ago, somewhere around the 1880 or something like that. But there were challenges, and how these challenges were worked on for solutions to come on. And then today we have a bouquet of solutions to offer, depending upon the utility of the customer, for the customer. And thanks again for your time and thoughts, because it was also great to see the interactions from the dealerships. Thanks for initiating it. And also thank the dealer members for bringing on their perspective and for the participation. I think a lot of questions have been answered. But however, we request panelists also that in the future we would be requesting your presence, because this is something which we really need to understand, and probably it takes time and a deeper understanding. Also looking forward to your participation in future events. We also talked about how the creation of ecosystem for manufacturing is pretty critical, and how it didn't exist a handful of years ago, but now things are a lot more different. We also talked about brand trust in EV manufacturers, because there are fly-by-nights. I mean, a lot of many manufacturers are there. And also, I'm quite flabbergasted to think that there were about 1,800 ICE manufacturers in Americas alone. So that's again something very, very similar to what's happening right now. But I guess water finds its level, and the level of water would probably would end of the day find its level would be probably with manufacturers who have a long-term vision, who probably have invested in not only products but also in systems and manpower. We also are quite glad to note that dealers are a big part of the EV dream, and we would certainly like to be part of the journey too. Thank you so much. Personally thank Nagesh, Dr. Amitabh, Ravneet. Thanks, Mr. Pradeep.